Oh, what's that over there?
Oh, this is a photo book based on like art directors and stuff like that.
Oh, dope. Is that for one of your projects you're working on?
Well, I usually sometimes yes, I always look at a photo book or art for an inspiration for a design because of the colors and the composition. It really inspires me when it comes to like designing buildings. Sometimes the colors is what help me when it comes to like composition for the buildings because sometimes it's very hard for us to color match like buildings. So a lot of photos help us with that because photographers are really good with color composition. So yeah, it gives me a lot of inspiration.
And isn't this something I remember you mentioned that you want to go into like set design and like fashion shows, right? Mm-hmm. So does this also kind of help you, I guess, like give you inspo for stuff like that?
Yes, definitely. So when it comes to architecture, I look at every medium, like fashion, like you said, and I look at art and I look at any films. I think that helps me the most when it comes to architecture because that's what I want to do when I get this major. Is work more in the mixed media film, mixed media like art aspect. Got you.
Awesome. Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah. So what are you working on?
So right now, for my studio, we have to design a mixed-use building. And we have a desk critique today.
Okay.
So what I do is I like to play around with Legos. I like geometric, very contemporary spaces. And what I did was I kind of did like a little rough draft area of what I want the space to look like. So I use Morfolio trace. So I kind of sketch it out first, and then I take Legos and I try to like implement what's in here onto here. You know, I try to bring the fun into architecture and not be so structured in the beginning.
Right.
Yeah.
I kind of like that because even though it's not that structured, it's still logical into your process.
Yeah.
So it helps you step by step. And I can see the difference between like the logical aspect to you making programs and me looking for like my eye-catching when it comes to a design build.
And that's so cool because design is like, everybody has their own process. Yeah. And that's what we're going to be talking about today on Behind the Design. What is everybody's design process? So stay tuned because we got a good episode coming straight to you. Peace. Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Behind the Design. On today's episode, we got a special guest with us today. We got Nia. Nia's in the building. Nia, what's happening?
Ashley invited me here to discuss with you guys how I set off with my design process. So I'll take you through if you would like to come and see.
Okay. Yes, for sure. Let's get it. So yeah, we're gonna be talking about our design process and what we're looking forward to this year for integrated. Okay. So Nia, what do you start off with when you're designing? Okay. How do you begin?
So when I first started design, I always like to go and analyze the site that I'm working with. I like to do a nice little site study, really see how the weather affects the site I'm on. My big thing is daylighting. I'm also really big on sustainable architecture, so I like to see in what ways I can incorporate sustainable architecture into my design. That's the first step. The second step would be finding a form, which is actually what I'm doing here now. Actually brought in some nice Legos, so it's my first time actually using Legos to form find, but I actually like it so far, and I'm just kind of putting together shapes, like a base form for me to kind of maybe develop on in the next few days. So yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, I guess I'll start next. So with my design process, it kind of varies based on the project. So like Nia said, it can depend on the site. Or for my design in second year, I was doing a recreational sitting. And so what I did was I analyzed different yoga poses, and that helped influence the form of my building. So just drawing inspiration for the things that are going to be included in my design. But like I said, the site also plays a huge role in that, and understanding where and what's next to the site. So
yeah, so I guess I'll go next. My design process is sort of similar to Nia's, where I kind of analyze the site first and see what I'm working with. Next, I'll say like I usually try to go in with something like chaotic and groundbreaking, but then I'll remember like KISS, keep it simple, stupid, and I'll just like I'll just like stick to my guns, and then it follows by like a lot of form finding and rindo, like massing, just a lot of blocks. So.
Okay, well, for my design process, I like to focus more on how the individual experiences. So when I'm considering a project, I kind of want to think even for myself, like if I were to go to this building, like what charm does it have, or like what big themes might have that will draw me to it. So I kind of prefer to work pragmatically, that flesh out the shape. I know for a lot of professors, we like to go in and focus on the envelope first and the form, and I feel like when you do that, you kind of have to like do textures to kind of plug in your program, rather than just like allowing your program to just be, you know, in this space based off of the site, like what would be best in what area, and kind of letting your form like build around that. So that's kind of how I start off my design process.
I'm a writer, so I love to write ideas down before I draw. I know it's kind of like the opposite of architecture, so whenever I get a program, I always write out my things, and then I translate that into bubble diagrams, which then I start to pull out the Lego blocks, and I start associating different colors with different programs. So after I write out everything, I group them together, do my little bubble diagrams, and then I start playing around with Legos. You know, I always want to, whatever I'm designing, I always try to keep it fun. I always try to remember, okay, you know, how can I make this interesting? How can I not be so strict about it? Because I feel like architecture is like, you have to follow a set of rules, but then you can also do what you want. So before we get into the structures and the HVAC and the mechanical, all that type of stuff, I just try to have fun with it and just let my mind flow and just play with the Legos. So that's what you see here. Like, of course, the green would stand for greenery, and you know, this right here is the land, and these rectangular cubes that you see here is like spaces, like program spaces. So that's what I'm doing. I'm just like mapping it out. So yeah, that's how I start.
So when you mentioned earlier that you do like a set of rules, I'm wondering for any of y'all, do you guys have that set of rule for each project, or that depends on the type of project you guys do?
And it definitely, at least for me, depends on the type of project, because you know there's codes and then zoning, because you never know like whether it's a site like in the forest or one in the middle of the city. So you know those things you gotta take into account.
Could you give an example of what you mean by a rule?
Like, when I mean rules, I mean like steps to it. So first is program, or site analysis, then program, and then sustainable aspects to the building, and then color, textures, and all that stuff. Lighting. For me, I start with program and then a little bit of sustainability, and then I progress more in sustainability, but I start very small like a seed. And then I always have the gear started when it comes to color and lighting, because that's like what catches my eye in terms of like my style of architecture. So when you guys have these set of rules, you guys try to incorporate your styles as fast as possible, or you do that later?
So I guess I don't really know what I think my style would then, I think maybe my style is just very scientific in style, like biophilic design, sustainable, anything where I can incorporate biology or science is my style.
Okay.
So maybe that's where I was like a little bit trying to figure out, what do you mean by style? Because I'm not really good with I haven't really developed my skill set on choosing good materialities that you know come together well. I throw a green roof on there, green wall, put some plants in there. That's but I'll do it in a way that it is like a rich experience. So yeah. So I would say then I do incorporate it right from the jump. Like in the beginning, I already have an idea of how can I make this the most green building that I can. Yeah,
and that's the way of the future too. So I like that you're using that process as fast as possible, because it's better to do it as fast as possible, because it really changes your design and your style.
That's true.
So that's why I was wondering, like, when you guys like find your style in which step, or
I know for me, I do it during the programming stage. In all of my designs, I always implement some type of courtyard, because you know, I'm from an island, so I always like to incorporate some type of outdoor space. My whole thing is try to bring the outdoors inside without, you know, being outside. So in all of my designs, whether I'm doing like a party design or even like some little simple thing like this, I always try to make different voids where there's some type of courtyard, and each courtyard has a theme. So that's basically like my design process. Like, how can I incorporate something that brings the outdoors in?
Yeah, nice.
So yeah, what about you guys?
Well, I've noticed like in a lot of my projects, after I've analyzed the site and everything, I usually like go in a program and massing and like work between those two. And I usually develop like massings that allow for the program to be easily understandable like to the inhabitants. So like I'll take like 2 rectangles or 3 rectangles or something, and then like I don't know if you could see, but like I kind of like intersected them and basically just do like stuff like that and play with them, and then I'll start to shape those shapes, and then really those create like my forms for like most of my projects. So
I like that.
yeah.
I like that because I'm more of a person where I'll find the form that I like and then fit my program into the form, which sometimes makes it not the most user-friendly space. But it'll be a nice space to experience. It just won't be as logical. So I really like that you kind of put the program first and then develop off of that. That's really cool.
I think a lot of times I accidentally start with like my style from the jump, instead of really considering the site. So I know for like a lot of professors, they tell us that we need to design with context, because if I just go ahead and design off that, when I actually place it on the site, like so many things just don't work. So I just think it's really important to actually do like a deep analysis of the site, just because I feel like I incorporate it mostly in the program. So once I have that site and I know like what's best for like, you know, a sitting area, what's best for what will bring in the most light, then I can go ahead and incorporate my style in those like specific areas based on the site. So yeah.
I feel like for me, I usually start with the form first, and like you were mentioning, Nicole, sometimes that causes for some stuff not to work and not to fit right away. So what I've found is the best way to do it is to just make it to where it's changeable and can be changed quickly without messing something else up, and just make the design versatile, I would say. But I've learned, like, I found out like my style is more of like glass and like sharp edges if I go back to my projects. So those kind of just get implemented throughout the project and throughout the process. So
I have 2 questions actually. So I know one thing a lot of professors will say is like we tend to find our project to be like our baby, and we don't want to like change a lot of things once we're like really set on an idea. Do you guys feel like that's a problem with you guys? Like when you hear criticism, you kind of want to like brush it off because you like your design so much, or do you take the criticism and like feedback and actually apply it like right off? You know what I'm saying?
That is a real good question.
Well, I think like in the real world, you kind of have to do that because you're responding to a client. While in school, you're kind of responding to your professor, and he is not a client. So sometimes you kind of just want to be like, no, that's not what I want. So I think maybe right now I can speak for myself. I don't really respond well to it, but in the workplace, you kind of have to respond to it. So it's something to definitely practice responding to.
Yeah, that's like another important thing, like in the design process, like critique, not just from yourself, but from other people. And I feel like if I receive critique from anybody, like I always like consider it first, you know. I never like blindly accept it, but I always at least consider it, even if it's just like a small detail, like a minor change. But you know, it's important to like reach out to other people too and like have them critique your work and like check it, because being the only person like to see your work, of course you're gonna develop like an attachment to it, and I think it's just kind of important to like get a different perspective from it.
I think that attachment can also make your design kind of stagnant. Like you kind of just get stuck and you're like, oh, it's perfect now. But like there's so many things you overlook. And then also you saying like the studio professor isn't your client. I kind of see it as like he is my client or she is my client. Because clients can be very picky, or they might like your design one day and the next day they're like, this does not work.
That's true.
So so when I hear the studio professor like suggest something, I kind of apply it immediately and see if it works for me. Just because like that's how a client would be. I don't know if you guys.
I'm glad. Yeah, I'm glad you asked that question because our professor this year for integrative, and we got to sign our project. He's like, this is not a project for yourself. So put yourself in your client's shoes, or think of who you're really designing for, and really kind of detach yourself from the project. Like, even though it is your baby, it's not yours. It's for the specific group of people. So really ask yourself, like, if I was this type of person, would I enjoy this space? And I think too, when you start asking yourself those tough questions, it'll kind of make the design process a little bit more easier, because you're kind of detaching yourself. Like, you could still have your personal style, but always have in the forefront, this is for this specific type of person.
That puts things into place, because I talked to an architect in Puerto Rico, and I had like a fantasy world that I thought architecture was about. And I asked him, like, what's your favorite design that you've ever made? He said none, because everything I do is for a client. So that made me put things in perspective, that even though right now I'm the center of the attention, like I'm the designer, I'm like the thinker, I am like the innovator, but when it comes to a client, you have to get their qualities and you have to get your own qualities and make it into like a compromise. So it's never going to be something you really, really, really like or really, really, really want. It'll be a compromise. So yeah, I think it's super interesting that we live in this world where we're like the main dogs right now. But once we're out of here, we're going to be taught that, learning how to like involve more people into your process is very important, and being in your client's shoes, which I don't think it's the same. Like, you have to talk to a client. Like, that's the only way you could be in a client's shoes. So it's pretty interesting, like the change we're about to get through.
Another question: how long do you stay in your on paper process?
Oh, well, I feel like I try to do a series of hand sketches first, just to be more free, because the professors tell us like being in the computer can be more straightforward and more practical. So just getting that hand drawings is more creative, in my opinion. And then once I do that, I try to incorporate it into the computer and then model. So, and that process could be a week, or it could be one day. So, at least for me.
I'm in the opposite, like, 'cause I sketch and I'm like, I don't know what to do with this. I don't know how to, but I kind of get my ideas, like the general idea. And then I just go model until like something clicks in my head. But that model process takes me a while, because I don't do the sketching as much, because you're more limited when you're modeling on Rhino or Revit or anything like that. So I always take the longest.
I can relate to that, because I never, like, going into architecture, I knew it was going to be a problem for me, because I don't like to draw. I never felt comfortable in my drawing skills, because I always felt like it had to be perfect. And like Maria, I will start off with a little sketch, but I would mainly go into Revit and just do models. And at first I thought, oh yeah, I'm getting a leg up, but in actuality it's kind of hindering your design, because like you go in and it's like you don't have nothing to go off of. You're just building a square. So I know this semester I'm really trying to incorporate more drawings, and I realized like it doesn't have to be perfect. It's just a sketch. As long as you show your process and like what you want to accomplish, that's all it is. But I think too, it's just like a learning. It's a learning. Like you're learning, and it doesn't come. It doesn't come easy for everyone, and that's okay as long as you get it. I think you'll be okay. But yeah.
That's interesting, because I kind of feel the opposite of that. I feel like I spend too much time drawing, and like maybe my drawing will be a little bit too ambitious compared to my digital skills. And then like putting things to scale, when I'm sketching it might not be like correct, and then I like start building it on Rhino or something, that I realize everything is just so out of whack. So I feel like that might kind of push me behind schedule, because I'm trying to figure out like, oh, what I drew on paper isn't matching up with what I'm like trying to design on a program. So I kind of feel like the opposite of that. I need to start spending a little bit more time like getting better at my digital skills instead of like wanting to sketch every single thing. So yeah.
When I hear you guys say like on paper, I think of like sketching at first, but like for me personally, I always write down like a certain list of things that I need to have or want to have in my buildings, like just anything. Like last night I was doing it, and then it'll kind of turn into the mass modeling on Rhino, and from there I'll like go into the sketches with trace paper, and then like overlay some ideas on top of this base form that I have. But I say most of the time, well if not all of the time, I'm on paper like just writing lists. Lists sell more than sketches.
So you do digital models before you do hand sketches? What you saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
Kind of like that, and then I'll like sketch the base out and then just trace over it.
We have Mr. Rhino King here.
And grasshoppers.
Okay, so I guess another thing I could ask is when you guys get like kind of burnt out or like you can't think of any more designs, is there something you guys do like even that's outside of architecture that'll kind of give you like a boost again, or
Like inspiration.
yeah, or just kind of like maybe giving yourself a break? Like maybe you've been running yourself like thin trying to think of stuff. Running yourself thin trying to think of stuff. I don't know if that happens to anyone else.
Yeah, that happened to me last semester, and honestly, I did not overcome it, unfortunately. But what I did at that time was I reached out to a peer, and they were able to kind of show me some of their sketches that kind of pertain to my design a little bit. But yeah, unfortunately, I didn't really. That's something I need to work on this semester though, for sure, so I can not have a situation like that again. But yeah.
Do you feel like there's a better way to like pace yourself?
Yes. In all honesty, the entire semester, the project was just it was kind of poorly planned by everybody in the class, including our professors. Just wasn't planned properly. So when it came time to make certain design decisions, we only had like a week to make them, which is a lot of pressure, and you didn't really end up getting to do what you wanted to do. So, I mean, some preventative measures could just be don't rush and pace yourself. Even if the professor is going on his own pace, make sure you know, hey, you need to have this done by this time because it's how you work. That's one thing I learned from that situation.
I'm like the opposite. I wish I had like a time frame, but for me it's all my intuition. Like when does it click? And that's when I start. Sometimes if I'm trying to make it click, it won't click until the day it's due.
So that pressure.
Yeah. So I try to step back and analyze. Like I said, like I go into art, look at fashion, I look at videos, film, just anything to get my mind off, because usually my inspiration is like when I'm watching a film and I see something, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's a good idea. For me, I'm waiting for that click, and sometimes when you force that click, it won't happen. But that's me. That's just, for some reason, the clicking is in my brain. If it don't work, it don't work. But it's kind of, it doesn't help me, I think, as much in the future, because when you have a client and you need it by a certain amount of hour, and I'm like, wait, I'm waiting for the click. Then you're gonna lose money. Like I have to learn how to, not wait for that click and trust my intuition better. But yeah, that's my way.
I think for me, I think for me, when it doesn't click, I have to or when something is not going right, because it happened to me the fall semester of third year. I will have to step away from it, because if you're looking at something so long, you're gonna just keep on seeing the same problems. And what I learned to do is I learned to ask friends who are not in architecture, what do you think about this? Because they have a way of seeing things that sometimes we may overlook, or they have a way of asking you questions. And with those questions, then you're able to kind of problem solve and be like, oh, maybe I could incorporate that, or I didn't think of that. So even though we're taught to look at things differently, they also see the world differently through a different lens. So I like to utilize a lot of people who are not necessarily in architecture, but who are in different fields, and ask them what they think about,
That's a good point.
certain projects and stuff.
When I get burnt out, and this may be bad advice, but I kind of take a break from architecture as a whole.
Yeah.
Like,
That's a really good idea.
yeah,
Yeah.
like one of my favorite like hobbies to do, especially when I'm feeling like burnt out or like tired or just like stressed. I like to go like on walks, like walk trails, kind of reset in nature and everything. And I try and keep like this mentality that, you know, something will happen in the end, like something will click, it'll work in the end, but I try not to stress myself out
Yeah.
like early in the beginning.
That's true. It's like your brain is a machine. You can't. Sometimes when the machine don't want to work, you gotta let her stay and regenerate. You know. But when we're on a time crunch, it's kind of hard to tell your teacher like, I just didn't want to, or like my brain didn't want to work.
I'm gonna do that one day. Tell me, like, can you give me an extra day, please?
Yeah.
It's not working today.
Because honestly, when it comes to design, it's not one tone. It's not like an A plus B equals like.
Yeah, it's a creative process.
Yeah.
You can't force a inspiration or creative process.
You can't.
So, are there ever times when, you know, like you have a desk grid and some people will just have like so much stuff that they worked on over the weekend and like the professor will sit with them for like 20 minutes and then they come to you and it's like, I have like this one thing and then they go away. Like, how do you feel about that when you don't have enough to show them? So like you can't really have a discussion is basically what they say. When you don't have enough, you can't have a discussion. Well, how do you guys feel when like stuff like that happens, or if it has ever happened? Or is it just me?
That has happened. Sometimes I'll be like straight up. I'll be honest. I'm like, yeah. Like for some reason I can't think of it. Like I'll be honest with them and I'll be like, this is what I have. It may not be a lot, but I need guidance. And this is what I'm thinking. But for some reason something is not coming together. Like what, in your professional opinion, what do you think I can do to resolve the issue? You know. And then what I do is I ask a lot of questions.
That's a good
So I think asking questions is like, you may not have a lot, but if you ask questions, they show that the brain is thinking, you know? And then by asking questions, I think you're able to come up with your own solution or help come to a solution. So yeah. Well, guys, it's about that time. We're sad to go. But I mean, I think we've been here for a long time and, you know, y'all learned a lot about us. So catch us on another episode of Behind the Design. It's been a pleasure. We'll see you later.
Bye.